I will now call to order the meeting of the Bristol, Virginia City Council. Today is Tuesday, February 25th, 2025. This time we'll have a moment of silent prayer. Please join me and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, good evening. It's great to see everyone out tonight. I feel like it's been some time since we've been together, about a month since we've met. A couple of things I wanted to just say about our high school sports team. So we're really excited that the Virginia High Bearcats are playing tonight in the region quarters. The girls' score when I was coming in, it was in the third quarter, and they were a little bit behind. So I'm hoping by the time this meeting's over, we will hear that they came through and won. And then the basketball men starts right after that game. So if we get done in time tonight, maybe we can all head on over to the basketball game. We also have our swim and dive team who are in the state meet. So we wish them a lot of luck. And this weekend, we are hosting at Virginia High School the VHL Wrestling Class 1 and 2 state championship. That's a really big deal. It's supposed to be in Salem, so we're excited that it's going to be here in Bristol. So just letting you know that, because I expect there will be a lot of people here in town. And so if you're wondering where all the people are coming from, they're coming in probably for that state wrestling championship that's on Saturday. So I will open it up and see if any of the council have any other comments.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. One thing that I will just acknowledge is that the Virginia General Assembly has largely completed their work for this session. And we do appreciate the work that our legislators do locally, as well as the support from legislators across the state on certain bills that have been very important to the city of Bristol, including the vacant properties bill, which will hopefully help us address the problem at VI. And appreciate Delegate O'Quinn, Senator Opillion, as well as members of both committees that handled that bill that I think you and the Vice Mayor had discussions with, and I did too. And
yes.
We appreciate their work.
Yeah, thank you for that reminder on that. And I also have to point out that our own city manager, Randy Eads, put a ton of work into that. He was in Richmond many times. I would pass him in the hallways up there where he was up there advocating for that bill. And I know he had a lot of input in that and worked with Senator Pillion and Delegate O'Quinn, which we greatly thank them as well. So thank you, Randy Eads, for your work on that. And having the, that wasn't on the agenda or in the thoughts in the beginning, and that was an idea that came from you, and I appreciate you putting a lot of thought into that and working hard then to now see that through. I believe it passed unanimously, if I'm not mistaken, so that's huge. So thank you for your work on that.
Just a quick thought, a request almost. It feels like springtime. It's warm and it's getting lighter later, which is nice. And I was downtown today at a local restaurant in downtown Bristol, and they had mentioned that it had been a little slower all throughout, the winter, January, February. So just a plea to anyone here, anyone watching, as it warms up, as we're out and about in the spring and the summer, always try to remember to support our local businesses here in Bristol, especially our small businesses, especially that are in our downtown area. We love our downtown, and we want to try to make sure that's always a great area to be in. So just to remember them as we're out and about.
Yeah, well, thank you for that reminder. That is a great reminder. And I should have mentioned at the beginning that the Vice Mayor is out of town for work, so he is joining us virtually tonight. So I would like to open it up and see if the Vice Mayor Holmes has any comments.
Thank you, Mayor Nave. I just wanted to jump in real quick, kind of reiterate a few comments that were said. First off, I hate that I can't be there. As you said, I'm out of town for work, so I wanted to join how I could. So thank you for that opportunity. But I do also want to reiterate the thanks to Delegate O'Quinn, our legislators, for the work they did on the bill to help with the BI property. Thank you to Mr. Eads and his hard work and his many trips to Richmond. That's not an easy drive, so thank you for doing that and the dedicated work you put into that. Also, congratulations to all our sports teams that have done so well, that are doing so well, and those that are about to compete again. And then finally, too, we had another round of flooding in our region. We have so many local first responders from our fire department, our police department, that are part of the Virginia Task Force 4 that stepped up and served the region. They did swiftwater rescues. I don't know how many hours they were active, but they were over in Tazewell County and maybe other places too, but I know they were definitely there serving, saving, and just doing a fantastic job looking out for our neighbors. So I just want to thank them for that. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for that reminder as well. I was very proud to see the work that our task force team was doing, and I know I kept seeing numbers. I'm not going to repeat them because I can't think and I'll get them wrong, but there were quite a few people that they rescued. It was amazing every time we heard about it. So yes, thank you to our police and fire department that were working on that. So now I'll pass it on to city manager comments.
Let me pull up some stats
Okay.
here real quick.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a couple of things to say. First, we haven't mentioned his name here lately, but Chief John Austin, as we all know, retired in December, and on February 18th, Chief Byron Ashbrook took over the police department. We're excited to have him here and work with our policemen and our citizens here in Bristol. As he gets acclimated to Bristol, I will be going out and introducing him to business leaders in the community over the next month or so as my schedule permits and his schedule permits as he gets acclimated to the new role here in Bristol. As far as the Swiftwater team, they had over 51 rescues of people, 17 dogs and 8 cats while they were called out. And after they were called out, I believe the next night our hazmat team was called out in Glade for a liquid propane truck accident, and there were 2,000 gallons of liquid propane that had to be dealt with by our hazmat team. So our fire department was very busy for a couple of 3 nights there. Lastly, and definitely not least, I want to thank Senator Pillion and Delegate O'Quinn for everything they did to help get that bill passed. As the mayor mentioned, that bill had not come to fruition until after the incident at VI, and filing time for bills was running short, and they were very receptive to getting that filed and supporting it on our behalf. I'd like to thank all the legislators who supported that, especially in the House. It passed 97-0, and then in the Senate it passed 30-5. And I hope Governor Youngkin supports that bill as well. And not only will it help the city of Bristol, but it will help a lot of other communities across the state that are dealing with similar problems that we're dealing with. So that's all I have for tonight.
All right, thank you. Now move into looking for an adoption of the agenda.
I move for the adoption of the agenda with the following changes, that we table items D4 and E1 to a future date to be determined.
All right, we have a motion on the floor to table D4 and E1 until a later date to be determined. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a second. Clerk, please call the roll.
Farnham,
Yes.
Holmes,
Yes.
Osborne,
Yes.
Pollard,
Yes.
Nave.
Yes. Okay, moving into the first item on the regular agenda, D1, proclamation recognizing multiple sclerosis education and awareness month. Staff report, Randy.
Multiple sclerosis is a chronic, often disabling disease that attacks the central nervous system, which is made up of the brain, spinal cord, and optic nerves. The severity and symptoms of MS are unpredictable and vary from person to person. There is currently no cure for MS, but there are treatments that can help to control the condition and ease some of the symptoms. Research is ongoing to develop new and better ways to treat the disease with an attempt to achieve the goal of everyone living their lives free from the effects of MS. March is MS Awareness Month, and we have a proclamation for MS Awareness Month. We do have an employee here who is impacted with MS, and it's important that we recognize what can be done and to bring light to MS and the treatments that are necessary for people.
All right, thank you. Reading of the proclamation. Want me to go ahead with it?
I can do it. Or you-
Okay.
A proclamation of Multiple Sclerosis Education and Awareness Month. Whereas multiple sclerosis is a chronic, often disabling disease that impacts more than 400,000 people in the United States, affecting twice as many women as men. And whereas MS can be mild or can cause individuals to lose their ability to write, speak, or walk, and whereas most individuals experience their first symptoms of MS between the ages of 20 and 40, and whereas the exact cause of MS is unknown and there is no cure, but there are treatments for initial attacks, medications, and therapies to improve symptoms, and recently developed drugs to slow the worsening of the disease. And whereas the MS Alliance of Virginia provides programs and services for anyone in Virginia whose life has been affected by MS, and whereas through education, assistance to support groups, special programs and events, and the dissemination of information, the Multiple Sclerosis Alliance of Virginia provides a better informed general population and the means to improve the quality of life for those in Virginia with MS. And whereas the Multiple Sclerosis Alliance of Virginia is a 100% volunteer organization formed to fill the needs of support groups, provide educational programs, activities and events, and help others start upbeat groups in their communities. And whereas raising public awareness of MS will lead to increased support and services for families in our region impacted by the disease. Now therefore be it resolved that Becky Nave, Mayor, and the City Council of the City of Bristol, Virginia do hereby recognize the month of March 2025 as Multiple Sclerosis Education and Awareness Month, adopted this the 25th day of February 2025.
All right, thank you. We're looking for a motion and second.
I move for approval of the proclamation as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any council discussion?
It's nice to hear that progress is being made. It's a difficulty that affects a lot of people, and it's nice to have periodic updates. We were talking about the proclamations before the meeting. It seems sometimes that we have a lot of them, but it's nice to know when we have the opportunity for these proclamations to hear that we're not just doing it again. There's actually progress being made, and it's nice to hear that.
All right, thank you. All right, clerk, please call the roll.
Barnum,
Yes.
Holmes,
Yes.
Osborne,
Yes.
Pollard,
Yes.
Nave.
Yes. And is anyone here tonight for the proclamation?
I don't think so, but I'll accept it on Mike Martin's behalf.
Okay. All right, next item on the agenda is the first public hearing for PY 2025 HUD Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, Annual Action Plan, and 5-year Consolidation Plan. Now open the public hearing. And we will ask Daniel Shue. No? Sorry, I'm on the wrong one. We will not. Go back to what you were doing. We will now open the public hearing, and I will turn this over to Ellen, as we do not have anyone signed up for public comment.
Thank you and good evening. The City of Bristol, Virginia is an annual recipient of federal funding through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, better known as HUD. This money is awarded without competition to entitlement cities across the nation, including Bristol, Virginia. HUD provides this entitlement amount based on a nationwide formula which uses several objective measures of community needs, including the extent of poverty, population, housing overcrowding, age of housing, and population growth lag in relationship to other metropolitan areas. The entitlement monies may be spent to develop or sustain viable urban communities by providing decent housing and a suitable living environment, and by expanding economic opportunities, principally for low and moderate income persons. All entitlement monies received are dispersed through the city's CDBG program. This year's allocation is unknown at this time, but it should be comparable to last year's allocation, which was approximately $260,000. Home funds are also unknown at this time. These funds are used for reconstruction and down payment assistance, and these are administered through the Tennessee-Virginia Home Consortium, of which Bristol, Virginia is a member. Every 5 years, the city develops a 5-year consolidated plan, which informs the next 5 years of annual action plans. Each year, the city develops an annual action plan that provides a blueprint to HUD as to how the city will spend its CDBG funding for the year. The annual action plan is developed by the city's Department of Community Development and Planning and is based upon identified needs of its low-income residents and communities within the city. All activities must be part of the city's CDBG 5-year consolidated plan, which is being submitted to HUD this year. HUD allows the total amount available for allocation to be split into 3 funding categories. The first of these categories is administration. The city incurs costs associated with the administration of the CDBG program and is allowed to utilize 20% from the total amount available for allocation to cover these costs. The second category of funding is public service projects. This category may not exceed 15% of the total amount available for allocation. The third category of funding is dedicated to community projects, which can be housing-related, economic development, and improvements to public facilities. These projects include housing rehab and sidewalks, demolition and code enforcement, accessibility, and safety. This is the first of 2 required public hearings to gather community input on the use of these funds, both for the 5-year consolidated plan and the 2025 annual action plan. The city invites and welcomes all suggestions and comments from residents and local organizations on the proposed uses for this plan. Staff will be requesting at a later date that the mayor appoint a council subcommittee to review and approve staff's recommendations for the program year 2025 CDBG annual action plan allocation. This subcommittee will include 2 appointed council members. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ellen. And we will now close the public hearing and move to item number 3. And this will be a joint public hearing concerning updates to section 50-136, agricultural use on a residential property. I will now open the public hearing and ask Chairman Chu to please come and do the same.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I now open our meeting.
Thank you. We do have someone signed up for public comment. As I call your name, if you would come forward, you have 3 minutes. If you will state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes, you'll have a green light, and then a yellow warning light, and then a red light means your time is up. So first up, we have Stephanie Scalf.
How are y'all? My name's Stephanie Scalf, and we live on Buckner Street in Bristol, Virginia. We wanted to bring it to the attention, obviously, because we have a couple chickens. And, you know, the ordinance basically makes it to where we can't have them. I'm a little disheveled tonight. I had surgery yesterday, but it was still important enough for my kids to be here. You know, outside of the joys that the kids have and learning the responsibilities and, you know, learning what you should do, how to take care of things, how to keep things clean, you know, we kind of feel like it's important that other people should be able to share in this too. Most residence parcels that we have as homeowners or even, you know, rentals, whatnot, property lines are not big enough for us to have, you know, a couple chickens at the house. And, you know, we're basically here to say, you know, it's a pretty great thing. You know, obviously some things need to be in place, keeping things clean, sound, obviously no roosters, which does unfortunately happen. It happened to us. You buy pullets, you end up with a rooster. We did rehome him. But, you know, just wanted to ask to bring the lines in a little bit closer so that, you know, families can enjoy this. Not to mention the cost of eggs right now is just crazy. And I think that, you know, a lot more people would enjoy it if they were able to do so. Hopefully just bringing it a little bit closer in so that other families, including us, can keep our feathered friends, you know, and others can enjoy the experience too. I'll make it short and sweet. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now we'll move into the staff report from June.
Hello. So I believe this is the second time I've shown up at council. My name is June McElwalm. I'm the city planner. It's the mess of consonants that shouldn't go next to each other, but June is just fine. So this is our agricultural use on residential properties. The reason this came up is because we received early in, or around mid-2024, a number of complaints regarding this ordinance. What initially had been a noise complaint due to there being a few roosters in the city quickly became an issue regarding the property lines. As where there were roosters, there were also chickens, and as the ordinance stands, there isn't the space to keep them. So those violations then became appeals, and then has led us to do some research into the ordinance itself to see if perhaps what was quickly rising to 6 or 7 potential violations and then 6 or 7 potential appeals might need a second look. So this is the section in particular that we found was the cause of all of the violations regarding the chickens. Roosters are a separate issue, and we don't think that that's something that needs to be updated, but the property line boundary is quite large. 100 feet from every adjoining property line is quite significant in a city that does not have many properties that meet that requirement with or without chickens. Most are under 100 feet in width total. This would require them to be 200 feet minimum to have chickens. So this is 904 Buckner, the first case that I looked into. You can see from the coop to the nearest property is 75 feet. This is the nearest house on the property. The property line distance was about 20 feet. Now it's nestled in a way in which you can't really see it from the outside. This angle is from the sidewalk itself, but it's nestled into a little nook. Can't really see it too much. There's certainly no smell. I can attest, I walked by there. With the new ordinance, this would not be a violation. There was no sight, no sound issues at the property itself. Second property that was looked at was 681 Glenway Avenue. This is from the street. The additional screening requirements that are in the ordinance, as per the zoning administrator being allowed to require, would prevent this from being seen. And again, I can attest, no smell was noticed or any other noise complaints. The only reason these came to staff attention was because both properties had a rooster at some point that led to the initial noise complaint. Neither one of which still has the rooster. So again, this is the existing ordinance, and highlighted in green. It's a little easier to see than the garish yellow I chose initially, but also it's highlighted in red on your paper in front of you. Highlights the changes that I think, or staff thinks, would be best fit for this. So the first one would be removing the R1A, R1, and R2 requirements, and just replacing them with single-family residential lots. We had a couple of cases where they were in an R3 district that would otherwise meet the requirements, and staff did not, and Planning Commission did not necessarily think that that would be a problem. Section 2C, this is a part that Councilman Pollard has talked to me about beforehand, but as required, the city would be able to inspect these properties to ensure that they're in compliance as the code is written. This was a request by the Planning Commission that we thought was a good idea, just to make sure that we can go and check and see, should a complaint arise, that we can go and investigate. It was recommended by Councilman Pollard to consider adding a part that states that should a request arrive to look into that might be needed. Section 5 of this would be the removal from 100 feet to 10 feet to the adjoining property line, and Section 6 being added to state that it must be still 25 feet from the nearest non-owner occupied structure. So it still has to be a decent distance from a house or a business, but the property line boundary is a bit shorter. Last but not least, Section 9 and 10, 9A and B both set a specific cost for the permit, which was not there previously, and then a recurring fee set at $25 per year. This lets us keep track of how many people are keeping these animals and lets us review their coops every year to make sure that they haven't changed anything or otherwise would be in violation. And the last one being that we have the zoning administrator has the authority to require conditions to meet these permit requests, such as additional screening or other improvements to reduce impact on neighboring properties. So maybe a fence, maybe some bushes, anything that would prevent the neighbors from having decreased property values because of activities of the property owner. And then the zoning administrator may require periodic updates to the Cooper structure should it become a nuisance as needed. So those are the changes that we thought might be fitting, and open to hear any comments or concerns that the council has.
Yeah, does anyone have any questions? I'm just wondering, I'm sure we don't have any idea how many are in the city, do we? I mean, and I think if we start looking at doing a permit, I'm not sure to look into what others do around us. I'm just curious if they require
Sure.
permits or what that looks like.
All other Tri-Cities cities require permits with varying conditions. Johnson City does a permit basically on a case-by-case basis through the animal shelter. Kingsport does it off of, I believe, 35 feet, and Bristol, Tennessee does it by that it should not create a disturbance with no specific guidelines whatsoever. When it comes to other cities in Virginia and the Commonwealth, it varies wildly, but the general consensus I found was somewhere between 10 and 25 feet. And somewhere determining whether it's property boundaries or whether it's the occupied building. We felt that having these two requirements of 10 feet from property line, 25 feet from a building was a good compromise between the general trends. As to the number of people who have chickens in the city, it's hard to say. More than you think is the answer I found. I know of course I've been here, I've gotten 6 specific calls for people who I know for sure have chickens, many of which have alerted me that their neighbors also have chickens or otherwise raised questions why their particular situation was being looked at and not so-and-so down the street. Should that trend hold true, I would guess maybe 50 to 60 properties have chickens, but again, that's a rough estimate.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you bring that up because just in the past 2 weeks, I've had 2 different families in the city reach out to me and ask me if they could have chickens. And I don't know if they already have them or not, but, they were asking me about it. So then when I saw this coming up on our agenda, I thought it was really interesting. So it must be something that maybe more people are looking into getting chickens, or just it's the conversation going on in the city right now.
I think it's a bit a little column A, little column B, especially with, price of eggs rising and stuff, and it being Bristol being a somewhat rural community or in a rural area, a lot of people like to raise chickens. They keep them as pets. They also make eggs, so it's something that's very attractive to a lot of people in the region, I've found, which surprised me since I started here.
Yep. And I think, as Ms. Scalf said, also in teaching children about it, teaching, part of the educational part is important, so that's true.
I'll say that I was in a very similar boat when I was a teenager. We had chickens. And I don't know, Madam Mayor, if you know where I grew up, but I grew up off of King Mill Pike on a dead-end street where we were absolutely in violation of every single requirement that we currently have. So I think it's great. I mean, I think this loosens it a lot. I mean, my only suggestion might be lower the permit for the first year fee, down a little bit, because, people, like you said, maybe some people are getting chickens because they want them as pets, or they just want to be able to teach their kids how to do stuff, but some people may be getting them because it produces eggs, and egg prices are going to continue to go up, with inflation and all that stuff. So, if they're concerned about the price of goods, maybe we don't want to impose a $100 fee right up front. That'd just be my off-the-bat suggestion.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I like that too, because you think if they're doing it to save money, then that might eat up all the money. And that's why my question in the beginning was, how many do you think we have in the city, or do we have any idea? Because it's not so much about, I don't believe it's about the city making money off this. It's more about just keeping track of who has chickens in the city, basically.
And
Right?
that's something we can definitely look into.
Right.
And Madam Mayor, it's also about staff not having to spend hour after hour after hour going out on zoning violation calls for something that we think could be corrected easily with an ordinance change.
You don't want to spend a day every week hunting down chickens?
Correct.
That is more accurate than you think.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of my reasoning would be, like, I know that there's a pet license fee, and it's a very small amount of money, and a lot of people just ignore it. I worry that if the first year permit fee is $100, that might be cost prohibitive, and people might ignore it anyway. So if it's a more reasonable amount, maybe they'll say, oh, I'm supposed to pay a permit fee, and it's not a crazy amount, so I'm going to do it.
Absolutely.
Yep. Any other comments? All right. All right, thank you, June.
Thank you.
We will now close the public hearing, and I will ask Chairman Chu to come forward.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll close this hearing.
All right, thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is presentation of the December 31st, 2024 financial information and staff report from Tamara.
Thank you, Mayor Nave and members of council. This is the general fund financial information for the quarter ended December 31st, 2024. This information is prepared on the cash basis and is unaudited. So our general fund summary with a budget of $91.154 million, revenues of $46.323 million, 51% of budget, expenditures of $40.428 million, 44% of budget, for a fund balance surplus at December 31st of $5.8 million. I just want to point out that $5.86 million of the surplus is from beginning balance funds that we rolled over from the prior fiscal year, so that's almost the entire amount of the surplus at December 31st. This is what our general fund revenue looks like. Local revenue is shown here in the blue, and it makes up 76% of general fund receipts. It is 77% of our budget. The state revenue is shown in red, 20% of general fund receipts through December 31st, and it's 19% of the budget. And the federal revenue here is shown in green at 4% of collections through December 31st, and it is 4% of the budget. So that's what our revenue composition looks like the first 6 months of the fiscal year. So our financial data graphs, these graphs compare actual revenues over a period of time. Fiscal year 21 is shown in gray, fiscal year 22 is shown in yellow, fiscal year 23 is shown in red, fiscal year 24 in green, and the current year in the blue. So local sales and use tax up across all periods. This is good news for the city of Bristol, and you can see just a year ago, 12 months into the fiscal year, the sales tax was just down slightly, but this shows an increase over all periods presented. Cigarette taxes are down from all years except 2023, so we have a decrease in that revenue there. Lodging taxes are up across all years presented, even backing out a rate increase that we had in the previous fiscal year. Meals tax, restaurant meal taxes are up across all periods as well. The general fund expenditure update. If all expenditures were paid evenly throughout the year, the benchmark at December 31st would be 50%. Government administration is at 51%, so just up slightly over that benchmark. Judicial administration is at 47%. Public safety is at 43%. Public works is at 31%, due primarily to the timing of certain public works expenditures. Health, welfare, and social services is at 42%. Education is at 48%. Parks, recreation, and cultural at 46%. Community development is at 41%. Non-departmental is at 74%, and that's due to the timing of our insurance payments. We pay 100% of our insurance payments in July of each year, so that's what's driving that category up there. Our debt is at 74%, and once again, that is just due to the timing of when our debt payments are due. And transfers are at 51%. So total expenditures for halfway through the fiscal year are at 44% of budget. Our financial data graphs continue. This is what our general fund expenditures look like, how the city's money is spent. 21% of expenditures year to date have been on public safety. Public works, which now includes solid waste, is at 19% of total expenditures. Debt is 16%, and once again, that includes the solid waste debt as well. Health, welfare, and social services is at 12%. Education is at 11%. Government administration is at 7%. Transfers is at 5%. Parks, recreation, and cultural is at 4%. Judicial administration is at 3%. Community development and non-departmental are both at 1%. And prior to us bringing solid waste into the general fund, the 1, 2, and 3 were normally public safety, health, welfare, and social services, and education. Sometimes education and health, welfare, and social services switched places, but that was really the 1, 2, and 3. So clearly the composition has been changed since bringing the solid waste into the general fund. Falls Phases 2 and 3 update. Budgeted revenues for Falls Phases 2 and 3 is at $1.18 million. The actual through December 31st is $728,986. 100% of the debt, which is budgeted at $2.164 million, has been paid through December 31st. So we've budgeted for a deficit of $983,990, and through December 31st, we're actually at a budget of $1.4 million. As we continue to earn revenues throughout the year, that deficit will decrease. And the deficit that we budgeted for in fiscal year 25 is significantly less than in prior years, and that's because due to the amortization schedule of the debt, there are no principal payments due this year on the debt, only interest. The debt service presentation. This is the city's planned debt service schedule. This schedule does include the 2023 general obligation bond anticipation notes paying off in fiscal year 2028 without being refinanced. And that certainly is something that the city needs to be aware of. We'll present a challenge. You can see here the debt escalation from funded debt expenditures. They will rise to $8.974 million in fiscal year 2027. you can see the excess, or I'm sorry, the shortfall of the funding, and the plan in place in fiscal year 25 and 26 to accommodate that, with committed debt reserve funds being fully expended in 2026 and additional funding needed. That being said, we will continue to monitor the revenues and expenditures for the current fiscal year, and if we don't need to pull the committed reserve funds in the current year, we won't, thereby making that last just a little bit longer. So this is the city's written debt service plan that we will follow. And council, that concludes the presentation. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for that. Any questions or comments at this time?
One of those items was transfers. Now that the solid waste has been incorporated in the general fund, what's the general idea of those transfers?
We transfer some of the DRI monies out. They have to go to the IDA. So as they come in, we transfer those out. We also transfer money to local capital projects for funded and budgeted local capital projects. Small transfer to the transit fund there as well. So those are the three large items.
Okay, thank you.
We certainly want to say thank you to you and the finance team for all the work that you do. I just have one question. I know that we were awarded the funding, through the governor for landfill expenses, and I was just curious on where we stand on, we haven't started receiving that, and I know we've got a lot more debt coming with that.
Right.
So
In December, we were able to finalize the MOU with DEQ, and January 31st, we submitted the first reimbursement, around $14.1 million. And we're waiting on DEQ review of that. We've not received that funding yet. We have the second reimbursement request ready, which catches us up through January of 2025, and it's approximately $1.5 million. So once again, we have not received any of those monies yet, but we anticipate as DEQ finalizes its review of requisition number 1, that we will have significant revenues coming into the city.
wonderful. And I know it's greatly needed, and we certainly appreciate your work on that. I did see when you were working on submitting the paperwork needed for this, we're not talking about a couple sheets of paper. We're talking about stacks this high. So thank you for all the extra work you've put into that, and I know it's going to be worth it, so thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Navin. And the Finance Department worked collectively hard on that. Solid Waste and Public Works, Jake Chandler, have worked on that as well, so thank you very much.
Yep, absolutely. All right, moving into item F, matters to be presented by members of the public, non-agenda items. First up, we have Reverend Jackie Knopfler. You will please come forward.
It's been a beautiful day, but it's been a long day. Madam Mayor and the other councilmen, city manager and his staff, and Mr. Diedrich and his staff. I'm Jackie Knopfler, 143 MacArthur Circle, Bristol, Virginia. I have 3 items I want to make mention of. I sent an email, I don't know if you got it, Madam Mayor, on EV charging stations. And I went into some detail with some research on the need for EV charging stations. I also sent it to you, Mr. McGee, and I hadn't heard anything back from it, so that encourages me to keep pushing on these things. Virginia received $106 million in federal funds for EV charging stations, and I thought maybe we might want to tap into that. I also researched where they are located on the map as far as rural Virginia is concerned. I think their travel is about 350 miles, before they need charging again. I know we have one at Sheets, And that stays packed, you know, full. And even my 7-year-old and 10-year-old can depict and point out which is which, you know, just in traveling, so they're all over the place. It may be something, and I want it to be an op-ed because I wanted some feedback on it. I needed feedback from you because you're in the tourist business and so forth. We're going to move into 36% in 2025 of increase in Ford, Volvo, and other car dealers producing these vehicles. So the change is coming fast, and I didn't want us to lose out on that money. The other thing, and there's more detail in my email. I might should have sent it to you, Mr. Eads.
And I'll just let you know, I did receive it, and I did send out some fillers because I was trying to gather some research on it
Yeah.
before I got back with you.
Okay.
And I do have some things that I have sent to Richmond asking for info on,
good.
but I will respond.
Okay, I got most of my information from Richmond anyway, so
And
that's good.
Ms. Knopflin, our Economic Development Director, and Ms. Spradlin, they have a meeting with an EV station sometime Friday. So-
Good. And I don't have to be present, but I'd like to know the outcome, some of that. Hope it didn't take up my time.
You're good, go ahead, yeah.
And the other thing is the doors. Now, you know, I'm here, and I'm going to be here, and I'm here for the IDA meetings, you know, and I complained about the IDA, or the door for interest in up on the platform. It literally damaged my cute pink chair, and but I kept pushing, and we finally got that changed. That door is easy access, but Amy always makes sure she's there, you know, just in case. Easy entrance and out door. It looks like a storm door. It should be extra heavy, but it's not. These doors out here, I beat and bang on that little doo-watchy there to try to get it never works. The inside door, sometimes it works going out, you know, but it doesn't work. I don't know if that's in the budget or so forth, but it's a federal building, and it should be accessible, you know, with accommodations. The other thing I want to make mention is I just caught this, Councilman Foreman, you was complimenting and supporting the small businesses, you know, and I appreciate that. I really do. Now, you may not need a wig, but I have a small business. And when you said the word especially those in the downtown area, that kind of rubbed me wrong. And you know me, I'm going to tell you about it. Because you have Bristol, Tennessee, also businesses there. And we want to promote Virginia up. From exit 7 all the way down. If the small businesses boycotted, then we wouldn't have a downtown. So, not that I'm going to start one, but I just wanted you to know that word especially downtown, all of our businesses are just as important as one as another. I know why we're promoting downtown though, and I do, but we really should be careful on our, you know, wording how we're going to compliment one another. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next person on the agenda is Daniel Shue.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've got all kinds of notes here because I didn't print something that I was supposed to print. And I printed something extra since there's not a huge crowd here.
Okay.
So I'm here to talk about old stuff. As all of you know, my name is Daniel Shue. I'm also known as the Old House Agent. I work at Prestige Homes of the Tri-Cities in Bristol, Tennessee, and my wife and I renovate dilapidated properties in Bristol, Virginia. And I wanted to come here tonight and give you all an update about great things happening in Bristol in the realm of historic preservation and its economic impact on our community. I would like to present these things. Hopefully, if things continue on with this type of progression, I can come back once a month or every other month to give you some updates on stuff. Some of this you're going to know about, some of it you're not. Monica and I have worked very hard in the Virginia Hills area of town, which is right here around us. I've contacted owners of vacant properties over the past 5 years, and I've sold these properties to investors and families. Just 10 years ago, you could buy a house on Lee Street for $35,000 And just 4 years ago, you could buy a house on Spencer Street for $25,000. I'm happy to tell you all today that our efforts and the efforts of the stewards in the area has paid off and brought about some incredible changes to the neighborhood. In December, I closed a house on Lee Street for $435,000, shattering the naysayers' opinion of home values in town. Then last month, another property that I sold to a man from Florida who saw value where locals did not, had an appraisal come in on his property on Lee Street for $660,000. That is huge. An investor client of mine has also remodeled 2 extraordinary houses. One of the first ones he bought from the city across the road. But these 2 houses are on Highland Avenue on one block. And fighting junked up porches and front yard public displays of aggression, this gentleman has breathed new life into these houses, saved one from demolition, and sold them for record-breaking amounts on Highland Avenue. He is now working on property that is the largest house on Highland Avenue, I think, to bring 2 luxury units to a once ravaged apartment building. So he's reducing those from, I think, 6 to 2, and they'll be sold separately. So it's a true duplex, like a townhouse. The Bristol Redevelopment and Housing Authority has received a $500,000 Choice Neighborhood Planning Grant for the Virginia Hills area. They have reached out to me for help with plans to incorporate historic preservation in their plans, create workforce and market rate housing, and inform all of those involved in the progress that they are not only interested in renovating existing low-income housing, but helping create a better community for all income levels. And if you don't mind, I have a little bit that Rich Pinnell sent me about that. He said the purpose of Choice Neighborhoods Planning Grant is to create a transformation plan for the Virginia Hills neighborhood just north of downtown, containing VI and all public housing in Bristol, Virginia. This transformation plan is intended to be holistic and to provide a roadmap to a thrilling community. The 3 main areas of focus are neighborhood, people, and housing. Neighborhood aspect is plan including economic development, parks and recreation, and public safety. People covers healthcare, employment, education, the arts, and the history of the area. The housing part of the plan will address the deteriorating public and private housing in the neighborhood. The transformation plan is required to include mixed-use, mixed-income development, and they are required to include the state's Historic Preservation Office in the process. The grand old houses in the Virginia Hills area need to be preserved and renovated. New housing needs to be built, and public housing needs to be renovated or replaced. Concentrating poverty can be detrimental to both the city and to the people living in the neighborhood, as part of the purpose of the plan is to attract families with higher incomes to the target area. This will require workforce and low, middle, and upper income housing, utilizing both the existing housing stock and new construction. So that's pretty cool news from them. And thank you, as we've talked about tonight already, Mr. Eads, Council, Delegate O'Quinn, Senator Pillion, and anyone else involved in the VI campus bill. Now we have some hope of preservation after that devastating fire, and I know that great care will be taken in the consideration of a buyer, and that preservation and economic development are at the forefront of that decision. The Bristol, Virginia Historic Preservation Awards are coming up in May. The program is designed to combat blight while rewarding property owners who have engaged in preservation and maintenance. Nominations are being taken until March 31st. Heather Moore says nominate someone you like or nominate someone you don't like. More record-breaking home sales are happening on Solar Hill, with houses on Oak Street now selling in the 300s. Oak Street's very small, smaller houses, and houses on Solar Street starting in the 500s. We are truly looking at a major shift in values due to restoration and preservation efforts. We are also seeing desirability rise in that neighborhood, a neighborhood once I was told was dangerous. On March 10th at the library, Whitney Manahan will be speaking on examples set by the city of Knoxville and Knox Heritage in promoting historic preservation in that community. She is the Director of Architecture and Design for Burwell Construction Company and is also the the President of the Board of Directors of Knox Heritage and serves as the Chair of the Advocacy and Engagement Committee. I promise I'm almost done.
All right.
Spearheaded by Mike McGurr, a team of over 60 architecture and landscape architect graduate students and faculty from Clemson, Egypt, and China visited Bristol from February 19th to the 25th, as they have been studying our Central Appalachian region with the center of their radius pinned to the VI campus, Bristol, Virginia, and Bristol, Tennessee. It's run by Dr. Hala Nassar, and it's called the World Design Studio. She visited Bristol and met with Mayor Nave and several staff and many stakeholders in preparation for this team in early November. The studio is producing visions based on gigabytes of historic and contemporary data, stakeholder and guidance. Materials will be adopted for use by the BRHA and the VI Forward as the HUD Choice Neighborhood Planning Grant commences for the next 2 years. It was fully funded by generous sponsors at no cost to taxpayers. So I just wanted to give you all an update tonight in response to anyone who thinks there is nothing going on pertaining to historic preservation in Bristol, Virginia, and that way and the people think we're still a blighted community. These buildings that have been plaguing Bristolians for decades are turning around and proving that there is real value in preservation, not only intrinsic value, but monetary value that benefits the property owners here and the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you for the work that you're doing. All right, next item on the agenda, the consent agenda.
I move for approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and second. Clerk, please call the roll.
Farnum.
Yes.
Holmes.
Is not.
Oh.
No.
Osborne.
Yes.
Pollard.
Yes.
Nave.
Yes. And now we're looking for a motion to adjourn.
I move that we stand adjourned.
Second.
All right, clerk, please call the roll.
Farnum.
Yes.
Osborne.
Yes.
Pollard.
Yes.
Nave.
Yes. We are adjourned.